Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. First of all, let's clear the air about this video Meet Kevin just made about SpaceX. The TLDW, he was effectively trying to imply that because Google owns a stake in both SpaceX and Anthropic, and meaningful stakes at that, that is the reason why Google and Anthropic are willing to pay over market rates for the data centers, specifically Colossus 1 and 2 that SpaceX has built. And he was arguing it's creating this closed circular economy where they're all benefiting each other. But one, I think that falls flat on its face because Anthropic has zero incentive to pay more than the going rate for compute because it does not own any SpaceX. And from Google's standpoint, you have to ask yourself the question, would they really overpay market rates just with the hope that the stock price will go up? So they can temporarily show bigger gains on their financials while they own SpaceX stock? I really don't think that argument holds any water because that's money Google is spending that they need to generate an ROI on. Whereas any hypothetical increase in SpaceX stock would just be that, hypothetical. And Kevin's primary argument for casting doubt on this SpaceX model was this chart right here, where he was calling SpaceX's figures an anomaly, but when you understand the context, it's really not. The chart shows us the build cost per megawatt in terms of millions of dollars, SpaceX coming in at 2.7 million, with all of the competition over $10 million. And the next column is the annual revenue per megawatt in millions, with SpaceX at $30 million, and the rest of the competition is under $4.6 million, which would give SpaceX a revenue to cost ratio of over 11, where everyone else is under 0.3, which yes, on the face makes it seem like an anomaly, so you have to ask what's going on here. And look, in the video, Meet Kevin did very quickly gloss over this point that the SpaceX figure, the $2.7 million per megawatt, that number was for the brownfield sites of Colossus 1 and 2, where SpaceX used existing buildings where the power infrastructure was already largely in place. So comparing that figure to the competition, which was largely greenfield sites, meaning brand new locations where you have to do all of the permitting and new construction and new interconnects, the process that can take a long time and is still quite costly, especially given construction costs right now. That is the primary reason these SpaceX figures look so good, because in a sense, it's comparing apples to oranges. And maybe most importantly, this chart entirely leaves out the cost of GPUs, which, as we should know, is one of the biggest cost components for these AI data centers when you consider all of the scale. And so when it comes to the revenue that these companies are able to get, it's going to boil down to the performance of the chips. And so all of that context and nuance is nowhere on this chart. Now, in fairness, Kevin does actually bring up some important points. It's nothing we haven't talked about here. One, they have these 90-day rolling cancellations. So these deals that SpaceX has signed with Anthropic and Google and others, so this is not guaranteed revenue for the long term. And Kevin actually made a point I made the other day, in that SpaceX is spending a majority of its spend on this AI build out. Nothing to do with rockets, nothing to do with space. And so part of the reason companies like Anthropic and Google have been paying these high rates to SpaceX is because they're in a transitory period themselves. They're busy trying to build out their own frontier level data centers, typically via the greenfield route, which, as we know, just takes time. So it's an open question, how durable are these CSAs going to be for SpaceX? That's a very fine point that Kevin made. But for him to try to make the argument that SpaceX is a scam, which was in the thumbnail, because of this one number that appeared to be an anomaly on the surface, and because Google has an investment stake in SpaceX, just doesn't carry water. So simply put, the demand for these frontier training and inference clusters is still outrunning any reliable supply, and SpaceX just solved that deployment time problem faster than everyone else, which is why the market is paying for it. But the question Kevin posed that was fair was whether this will translate into greenfield setups that will maintain such attractive returns, or whether the rates they're getting will compress and these deals might get canceled in a short-term nature as Anthropic's and Google's own builds come online over time, along with any other companies that might be considering some of this frontier compute. And very importantly, just remember, not all data centers are created the same. So what SpaceX has, large coherent clusters of the newest NVIDIA generations, some GB2 and 300s. The availability of that level of compute is still very scarce today. So Kevin did raise some important questions. Hopefully that was enough clarity to understand what's going on. But for Kevin to argue this SpaceX model is a scam because of that anomaly number and because Google is invested in SpaceX, to me is just ridiculous. But yes, there is plenty of risk in this business model given how fast things are changing. Speaking of that, it's now official. Tesla said Terafab will be built in Grimes County, Texas. In April, we broke ground on a research fab on the north campus of Giga Texas, the precursor to Terafab. Both Tesla and SpaceX will need far more chips than current and future global production can supply. This is why we're building the largest chip manufacturing facility ever, with the goal of producing over 1 terawatt of compute per year. And if you haven't seen it, just enjoy this short video render that Tesla and SpaceX shared. Possibly my favorite piece of media these companies have ever put out. SpaceX said its growing Texas footprint alone has already generated more than 56,000 direct and indirect jobs, over $28 billion in estimated economic impact since 2024, and hundreds of millions in indirect tax revenue since 2024. But this right here is the huge change for Tesla. They said the initial phase of Terafab is estimated to require about $16.8 billion in capital investments from SpaceX and Tesla, with potential future expansion phases bringing total investment much higher. The facility will employ at least 3,000 people, many of whom will be from Grimes and nearby Brazos County, continuing the trend of our other Texas sites where between 60 and 80% of new hires are local residents. Right now, it's not clear if this is $16.8 billion from Tesla and SpaceX each or $8.4 billion each, but either way, let's take the latter and say it's $8.4 billion from Tesla. That's $8.4 billion more than we were expecting yesterday. So listen guys, ultimately this Terafab project is going to fly over a $100 billion capex investment over the next few years, meaning it's hands down the biggest project that SpaceX and or Tesla will ever have worked on. And now they're doing it together. So the signs for this merger acquisition could not be any stronger right now. And so now we likely know why Tesla has prepared a debt facility of up to $30 billion. Not that they've taken it out yet, but they put it in place. And this news is likely a big reason for that. Now, at this point, it's not explicit whether this potential $8 billion is included in Tesla's expected $25 billion capex spend this year, but I think there's a good chance it's not included because on the Q1 call, they didn't say anything about the actual Terafab. They only mentioned the research semiconductor fab in Austin. And Elon said Tesla would be building the research fab at Giga Texas, something around a $3 billion initiative. And later he said SpaceX is going to take care of the initial phase of the scaled up Terafab. That's what we figured out thus far. So at that point, it seemed like SpaceX would cover that initial phase of just under $17 billion. But today we learned that Tesla will also be footing that bill to some degree. And on the jobs number for that 3,000 figure, Elon said that number will be much higher over time. That's just the first year or so. So of course, this is incredible for American manufacturing and supply chain security and jobs and economic creation. All of that should go without saying. But more practically, we have so many questions like what will the revenue breakdown look like for SpaceX and Tesla? Who will get what allotment of chips and when? So far more questions than answers, and this will be a decade plus type of project. But it's now official, one of the most incredible manufacturing sites is set to be right here in Texas. Now, Elon did say my very approximate guess is that Terafab AI compute output would be around 25% for Tesla Optimus and around 75% for AI spacecraft. So at least for now, it might be fair to assume that AI-5 is all Tesla is expecting to need in the vehicle, since that will be coming from TSMC and Samsung, meaning for Tesla vehicles to do what they need to do, they might not need anything from the Terafab. Now, obviously, this is all subject to change, but this math right here means 0% for Tesla vehicles, which again means we should have all kinds of questions if SpaceX and Tesla are not going to join forces. Then we need to know how much is Tesla contributing and why, and what are they getting in return and when, and so on. And sure, maybe this post from Elon means Tesla would only have to pony up about $4.2 billion, 25% of that initial stake, but again, we just have more questions than answers right now. Tesla said Megapack 3 is officially rolling off the line at our newest mega factory in Brookshire, Texas. The factory went from groundbreaking to operation in 16 months and has a design capacity of 50 gigawatt hours per year dedicated to Megapack 3. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly production of Megapack at Lathrop switches over to the Megapack 3. And with Megapack 3 now in production, we should see Mega Block right around the corner, which will include up to 4 of these Megapack 3s, with those medium voltage transformers and the switchgear built in. Tesla said our goal is for no Tesla battery to end up in a landfill. Across our US operations, we're recovering more than 90% of key battery materials like nickel and cobalt from cells that we recycle.
None of our scrap batteries are sent to landfills. What traditional recycling processes do is that they mix batteries from different sources in the industry into crude black mass, which is comprised of nickel, cobalt, lithium, and graphite, and that's then sold on the open market. It leads to variable recovery rates and downcycling of critical materials. At Tesla, we do it differently.
Battery scrap generated at Tesla's manufacturing lines or in end-of-life vehicles are sent to dedicated facilities in Nevada and Texas. At these facilities, the battery materials are carefully disassembled and mechanically processed to produce black mass and other high-value products. These products are then returned to battery supply chains where they are processed into new batteries.
Here in Nevada, we processed around 3,000 metric tons of material this past year, which is equivalent to around 9,000 Model Y rear-wheel drive vehicles of material. Our Texas recycling facility is expected to process around 3,000 metric tons of material this year.
Our recycling operation is super important because we're able to secure our battery materials supply chain, lower the cost of our products, reduce dependency on mines in North America, and overall lower greenhouse gas emissions for the supply chain. By 2030, our recycled material output will rival the output of mines in North America.
I'll say that again for people in the back. By 2030, they're expecting their recycling to rival the output from mines in North America. When it comes to the legal battle for Tesla trying to get some of its Cybertruck production parts from this company, Angstrom, Tesla just won an order allowing it to recover its custom equipment from the factory it was claiming was holding it for ransom. The problem is the owner of that factory immediately declared bankruptcy, hindering the turnover of the equipment. And now we have lawsuits filed by both sides, with each alleging the other is not living up to agreements. And for what it's worth, Angstrom is arguing that Tesla's Cybertruck volume fell short of expectations. And in Angstrom's lawsuit, they said Cybertruck sales have been extraordinarily disappointing, and to the extent there's a customer backlog, Angstrom denies it consists of public consumers, but is instead a backlog of vehicles purchased by Tesla's affiliates. So maybe they were referring to SpaceX here. So Tesla was about to be allowed to go get the equipment, but then this bankruptcy caused an automatic stay, so it's still a mess as of today. Abhimanyu shared that Tesla's unsupervised robotaxi is now running at night in Austin, but as far as we can tell, it might only be until around 9 or 9:30 depending on the day. He also said these cars are still not taking the highways, and it is true there are still supervised rides taking place in Austin. In some potentially very exciting news, some Tesla owners are now getting a big navigation update. Now, is this going to be the one that magically cures all of FSD's navigation issues? We have no idea, but we can hope. Today, Ford said its mid-size electric truck will have a starting price of $28,350 and be called the Fathom. Pre-orders for the 5-passenger truck will begin early next year. Customer deliveries are expected to begin later in 2027, and officially they have not revealed the look of the truck. This will be the first vehicle on Ford's new Universal Electric Vehicle platform, the UEV. Ford said the goal for the UEV platform is for each vehicle built on the system to be profitable within 1 year of launching and to be cost competitive with global EV leaders from China and Tesla. And the Fathom will be built using the company's new assembly tree manufacturing process at its Louisville assembly plant in Kentucky. And yes, assembly tree is going to be a play on the unboxed method. I heard you guys loud and clear on the stock prices at the end of the video, so I will keep those in. Thank you for all of the feedback, and going forward, knowing how much interest there is in it, I might add some more color over time. But for today, Tesla closed at $319.53, down 0.63%, and SpaceX, on a day when most were expecting a very red day given the share unlock, closed at $114.92, up 6.14%. And many of you will have heard me say it before, usually when everybody is expecting one thing to happen, the opposite happens in the markets. And this all happened today with the NDX down 0.39%. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.